Greatest show on earth. Let's play Hardball. Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews in Washington. An American leader owes his country more than a 24/7 circus of tweets, personal attacks, and self-celebration. Don't you think? Unfortunately, the latest episode of Trump TV, what else can you call it, is all sizzle and no steak. Ask yourself, where's the beef in his meeting with the North Korean despot? The answer is, spoiler alert, Kim Jong-un agreed to let us look for the bodies of American servicemen his regime has been hiding for 3/4 of a century. That's our get here. How can you not love a guy like that? What a sweetheart this guy Kim is. What a caring human being. In any case, it's apparently enough for Donald Trump. Tonight, Trump is flying home after a day of pageantry and theatrics in Singapore. This afternoon, he tweeted, got along great with Kim Jong-un, who wants to see wonderful things for his country. He also complimented the despotic dictator for his great personality and called Kim funny and very smart. Well, it was a dramatic shift, of course, from a year ago when Trump mocked him as Little Rocket Man and threatened his country with fire and fury. Trump also praised the joint statement he signed with Kim Jong-un, calling for new relations between the two countries and a commitment to complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Let's watch.
I think it's a terrific document. It's a starter, but it's a terrific document.
They have to get rid of all their nuclear weapons.
They've got to get rid of. Yeah, they will. I think they will. I really believe that he will. I've gotten to know him well in a short period of time. Yeah, sure. It's denuking. I mean, he's denuking the whole place, and he's going to start very quickly. I think he's going to start now.
Well, the joint statement from the two leaders seemed to fall short of the president's own hype. As the Associated Press put it, rather than a detailed statement filled with concrete restraints on the North, the document seemed to amount mostly to a restatement of long-assumed principles and an agreement to keep talking. North Korea has promised denuclearization before, going back to a 1994 agreed framework Pyongyang signed with the United States back then. At a press conference overnight, Trump was pressed on how the United States would verify that North Korea follows through. Let's watch.
We talk about the guarantees, and we talk about unwavering commitment to the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. This is the document that we just signed.
Did you discuss with Chairman Kim methods to verify, either with the United States or international organizations, that very process? And do you have a timetable?
Yes, we did. And we'll be verifying.
That to us?
Yeah, we'll be verifying. It'll be verified.
How is that going to be achieved, Mr. President?
Well, it's going to be achieved by having a lot of people there.
It wasn't too long ago, though, that you said you defined success of this meeting by North Korea giving up its nuclear weapons.
Well, that's what they're doing.
Can you say why you didn't secure those details in this agreement?
Because there's no time. I'm here one day. We're together for many hours intensively, but the process is now going to take place.
Well, for President Trump, a lot comes down to his newfound trust in Kim Jong-un. Let's watch that.
I believe that he wants to get it done.
You trust him?
I do trust him, yeah. Now, will I come back to you in a year and you'll be interviewing? I'll say, gee, I made a mistake. That's always possible. So, you know, we're dealing at a very high level. A lot of things can change. A lot of things are possible. He trusts me, I believe. I really do. I mean, he said openly, and he said it to a couple of reporters that were with him, that he knows that no other president ever could have done this. I mean, no other he knows the presidents. He knows who we had in front of me. He said no other president could have done this. I think he trusts me, and I trust him.
Wow. For more, I'm joined by New York Times Chief White House correspondent Peter Baker. He's also an MSNBC contributor. Former governor of New Mexico, Bill Richardson, who's negotiated with the North Korean government before, Daily Beast columnist Gordon Chang, and the vice president for the National Security Program at Third Way, Mika Oyank. Let's start in this order. I want to start with Peter about the reporting here. Do we have any evidence, to answer what Major Garrett was asking about, do we have any evidence that there was a worked out plan for verification of any kind or any kind of agreement along those lines?
No, that's going to have to be the product of months of work. I mean, this is a very complicated process. The North Koreans have an estimated 141 different sites as part of their nuclear program. You can't just sort of walk in there and switch off a switch. this is going to be a very complicated negotiation going forward. First of all, just to arrange the logistics, how would it work, what kind of time frame would it be, what kind of declaration would North Korea give so that we would have a baseline and know what we were talking about in the first place. We have, our intelligence on it, but they've never made a declaration that the United States is considered to be satisfying. And then you'd have to figure out, how do you verify? How do you actually know that they've done the things that they're promising to do? This is only the beginning of the process, not the end.
Do you have any evidence that the North Korean people, who are subject entirely to government supervision as to what they learn and dictate, have they heard anything about denuclearization? Because I just saw a wires thing that came out on their government news agency that never mentions it. All it does is say, we've agreed to withhold our provocative, irritating exercises from the 38th parallel. What do they have? Has Kim told his people he's going to denuclearize?
It doesn't sound like it. At least he's not emphasizing that. The report I just saw from their state television indicated they were emphasizing the meeting itself, the fact that he had this meeting with the American president, that he was on a peer level, in effect, with the American president, and didn't talk about denuclearization. The truth is, I don't know that it matters that much. It's not like he's worried about popular support and suddenly, they're going to abandon him if he gives up the nuclear weapons. The point is, in fact, that he could get more popular support if he's able to deliver on some economic benefits. That's the trade-off that Donald Trump is implicitly suggesting here. He even showed a video of what a future North Korea could look like: modern and hip and economically prosperous. That's the deal here that he's trying to get Kim Jong-un to buy into, a vision of a new North Korea that is more like its southern neighbor.
Let's go to Governor Richardson on this. Governor, you've been through this before positively and sometimes unsuccessfully, but you've been great at the particulars of getting people out over there. Are we safer now after yesterday?
Well, yes, we are safer in that there's a diffusion of tension in the Korean Peninsula. South Korea is on a program of bettering relations with North Korea. Japan is still very jittery because they're susceptible to their missiles. China is helpful on the sanctions, but they're trying to keep them, they're weakening them. We are a little better off in terms of tension, in terms of there's a movement towards normalization. The problem is that we got nothing in the area of timeline specificity and any kind of inspection regime whatsoever. The North Koreans obviously resisted. And, had the administration asked me, although Secretary Pompeo did call me once, I would have told them, the North Koreans always want us to go first in a negotiation. Then maybe they will do something. Well, we went first. We made the mistake. We said that we're going to suspend some of the military exercises with South Korea. I would have said, do it concurrently. Don't give them something right away, especially when on the inspection issue, on the nuclear, on the missile negotiations, they've given us nothing. So in 60 days, if they don't have an inspection regime, if they don't have a specific plan for freezing and destroying some of their nuclear weapons, they've got maybe 60, or their missile sites or conventional weapons.
Right.
I think they got the better of the deal.
Let me go to Meek on this, because what I was struck by is the fact that after this 3/4 of a century since the Korean War, the hostilities, the actual fighting stopped, we haven't been able to get our bodies back. I mean, it's the most minimal humane thing. Let us have our bodies back of service people who were killed in that war. And now they say, we'll let you go look for them, about $1 million a person. Maybe you can find some bodies here or there. This is such a small, and I would think even repellent offer to us to say, yeah, you can go look for the bodies.
Yeah, it does nothing to address the security threat to the United States. As Governor Richardson said, we're not talking about the ballistic missiles that can hit the United States. We're not talking about the nuclear weapons. And, allowing the United States to search for its POWs and MIAs, it's important to us, but many other countries do that. And it's not like we should have to pay for that privilege. At the same time, when Trump says, well, we're going to stop our military exercises, we're undermining our own military readiness for the troops who are there now and their ability to interact with the South Koreans in case of war.
Well, Donald Trump, as I said, delivered a major concession, suspending joint military exercises with the South Koreans. He referred to those exercises he did as provocative, the same word used by the North Koreans. He's taken their side of the rhetorical war here. Let's watch.
Did you talk about pulling troops out, U.S. troops
We
out of
didn't
South
discuss
Korea?
that, no, but we're not going to play the war games. You know, I wanted to stop the war games. I thought they were very provocative, but I also think they're very expensive.
Well, according to NBC, both the Pentagon and South Korea's military appeared to have been blindsided by Trump's statement, his concession there. And the Associated Press reported Trump's own advisors had urged him against halting the exercises. New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof wrote, Kim seems to have completely out-negotiated Trump, and it's scary that Trump doesn't seem to realize this. The cancellation of military exercises will raise questions among our allies, such as Japan, about America's commitment to those allies. Gordon, that's the question. If I were a Japanese person reading the papers today, I'd say, wait a minute, we're not even working together to keep ourselves in shape to defend ourselves against North Korea anymore. Why would we stop practicing these alerts and these exercises?
That would be a grave mistake, because our readiness depends on these exercises, especially because we have two separate militaries working together. You know, if we can't deter North Korea, we've got to defend South Korea, and these exercises are critical to that. And so I hope that President Trump reverses that decision, because that is a mistake that is going to have problems with our alliances. And Chris, you're absolutely right about the Japanese. You know, they are looking at the United States as being a selfish power here, negotiating to protect itself and not protect its ally, Japan. And there was no mention of the abductees, the Japanese citizens who were kidnapped by North Korea. There was no mention of that in the joint statement. There should have been, and I hope that there will be when they come up with a more definitive arrangement.
Peter, what's this word I hauled today? Another one of these immediate 180s on the Trump front, where Mike Pence is out there telling people up on the Hill that we're not going to stop our exercises. What gives?
Well, there was some confusion about that. Immediately after that, there was a subsequent report saying, no, he didn't say that. So I haven't gotten to the bottom of that. But it does indicate how ad hoc this whole thing is, right?
Yeah.
You know, if the president makes an agreement like that, usually there's some sort of preparation for it. There's a rollout plan. There's a way to inform not only the allies, who apparently seem to have been caught off guard, but your Republican allies on the Hill as well, who take this stuff very seriously. That doesn't seem to have been as well organized as you might have hoped it would. Certainly, this confusion involving what the vice president set up there indicates that. But that's sort of what this president, you know, that's how he rolls, right? He's a freewheeling kind of person. He's not somebody. He said he didn't need to prepare for this. That he would basically go off his gut, and that's what we're seeing.
Well, during his press conference this morning, Donald Trump spoke about Otto Warmbier, the American college student who was imprisoned by North Korea and died shortly after returning home in a coma. Let's watch that.
Otto Warmbier is a very special person, and he will be for a long time in my life. His parents are good friends of mine. I think without Otto, this would not have happened. I really think that Otto is someone who did not die in vain. I told this to his parents. Special young man, and I have to say, special parents, special people. Otto did not die in vain. He had a lot to do with us being here today.
Well, according to Trump, the issue of human rights was discussed briefly at the summit, and Trump said he thinks Kim Jong-un is committed to making change in his country. Let's watch that part.
They will be doing things, and I think he wants to do things.
I wonder what you would say to the group of people who have no ability whatsoever to hear or to see this press conference, the 100,000 North Koreans kept in a network of gulags. Have you betrayed them by legitimizing the regime in Pyongyang?
No, I think I've helped them, because I think things will change. Now, at a certain point, I really believe he's going to do things about it. I think they are one of the great winners today, that large group of people that you're talking about. I think ultimately they're going to be one of the great winners as a group.
Governor, this is Orwellian. I mean, to talk about how they're going to be better off in the gulags because of this friendly meeting down, this date that he had with the Kim Jong-un, the dictator. And also, it's kind of a grotesquerie, isn't it, to say that somehow a guy who was beaten up, his brain was basically beat up, it comes back barely alive, and somehow, after the torturing of that guy, that somehow led to this summit. What does that mean, morally speaking, to say somehow he was I don't know how to explain why Trump would say that. Your thoughts?
Well, I can understand why he's saying that. I was involved in trying to get Otto Warmbier back, my foundation, but it was the State Department that ultimately did that. You know, the North Koreans take American prisoners and they use them as bargaining chips. But on the whole issue of human rights, it was not discussed. It barely was discussed. Not just the gulags, but issues of torture, issues. A lot of these people are starving. They don't know how to coexist. Their agriculture, many people are jobless. If you're in the military and you're members of the elite, yeah, you're taken care of. But I think at the very least, if we're going to promise economic assistance, prosperity, investment, that has to be tied in, like our foreign assistance programs, with improvements in human rights. Allow access to Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the United Nations. I mean, we don't know how bad things are. I can tell you they're pretty bad, even though when I visited 8 times, they keep an eye on you. They don't let you do anything. I once tried to get into the subway. I barely got in to see how people are, but it's very restricted on what you're able to see. Full access, unfettered access to determine how we can improve the human rights situation and the life of these people. This is the poorest nation on earth where a lot of people are starving.
Well, all you have to do, anybody watch right now, is watch any of their parades, watch any time they come out in public. They look like they're automatons. The people have to smile exactly in synchronization. They have to behave totally according to what they're supposed to do in that moment. They are freakishly controlled by their government as individual people. There is no freedom in that country. You can see it every time we get a picture of them in one of their parades. Anyway, thank you, Peter Baker. Thank you, Bill Richardson. Gordon Chang, thank you, and Mika Ouyang. Coming up, President Trump's praise for Kim Jong-un beats trading nuclear threats, I guess, but is it too far over the top? He's praying to the guy, practically. Trump called him talented. He said he trusts him. Even said his country loves him. Is Trump hoping to flatter this guy to a deal? I think he's treating him the way he likes to be treated. Plus, new reporting on how the president's trying to save himself from the Russian investigation. What does it say that Trump's lawyers now are in cahoots with the lawyers for other people caught up in the Mueller investigation? I guess he believes in multilateralism when it comes to legal defense. In the Hardball Roundtable on why Trump spent part of the summit talking about real estate deals. He's going to bring sandals, I guess, to North Korea. And why he's punching back at Robert De Niro? Well, finally, let me finish tonight with Trump Watch. This is Hardball, where the action is. Five more states are holding primaries today, including South Carolina and Virginia, where polls just closed. In Virginia, all eyes are on the 10th district, where Democrats are choosing a challenger to take on vulnerable House Republican Barbara Comstock. Hillary Clinton won that district by 10 points in 2016, so Comstock's seen as a key pickup opportunity for the Democrats. Meanwhile, we're seeing early returns now in the race, pitting 3 Republican candidates vying for the chance to take on Virginia Senator Tim Kaine. He was, of course, Hillary's running mate in 2016. In South Carolina, Republican Congressman and former Governor Mark Sanford is facing a strong primary challenge from a pro-Trump candidate. Today, Trump tweeted his support for Sanford's opponent, saying Sanford has been very unhelpful to me in my campaign to make America great again. He is MIA and nothing but trouble. Well, Trump added he's better off in Argentina. Of course, in 2009, Sanford famously claimed he was hiking the Appalachian Trail when, in fact, he was carrying on an extramarital affair in Argentina. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Hardball. Following yesterday's historic summit, President Trump is headed back to Washington right now with a blossoming appreciation for North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. While in Singapore, Trump heaped praises on the leader, calling him talented and smart. Let's watch more of this.
Well, he is very talented. Anybody that takes over a situation like he did at 26 years of age and is able to run it and run it tough, you'd be very surprised. Very smart, very good negotiator.
Really, he's got a great personality. He's a, funny guy. He's a very smart guy. He's a great negotiator. He loves his people. Not that I'm surprised by that, but he loves his people. I think he liked me, and I like him, and I understand the past. And, nobody has to tell me he's a rough guy. He has to be a rough guy, or he has been a rough person. But we got along very well. His country does love him. His people, you see the fervor. They have a great fervor.
Oh, yeah, a lot of individualism, that kind of. This seems to be part of a pattern for this president who praises autocratic leaders and badmouths our Democratic allies. Let's watch him.
It's a great honor and privilege, because he's become a friend of mine, to introduce President Erdogan of Turkey. He's running a very difficult part of the world. He's involved very, very strongly, and frankly, he's getting very high marks. And he's also been working with the United States. We have a great friendship. As countries, I think we're right now as close as we have ever been. We've had a great relationship. This has been very successful.
He's a killer, though. Putin's a killer.
A lot of killers. We've got a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent?
That sounds like Michael Corleone in Godfather 1. You don't think senators kill people? How naive are you? Anyway, for Trump, the Singapore summit was an opportunity to make history, but for the North Korean leader, it was a public relations success, cementing his Trump-backed legitimacy in the world stage. For him, joined by John Wolfstall, he's former special assistant to President Obama, and Vivian Salama. Salama is a White House reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Both of you, why the praises? I can see we got along okay. We all talk about political communiques like that when constructive talks, the language. He's coming out like a kiss butt. It's outrageous. It's outrageous the way he talks. This guy's a killer.
I only see two plausible explanations. One, I think, is the more likely, is that Trump is jealous of this people. It's a natural proclivity towards rough guys, and he thinks that's respectable.
He wants to ride around the horse with his shirt off like Putin. Is that what he wants to do?
I think the other possibility here is that, look, Donald Trump's a salesman, right? He's trying to get this, butter him up and say, look, what does it take to get you in this timeshare today? The video he showed was like a timeshare video, right? So what do I do to get you to sign on this line? If he wins, if he gets the guy to sign and actually follow through, it's a great deal.
Okay, you're an old commie like Kim. Right? They're communists. They don't believe in anything except the state. And he's saying you got to bring sandals in here. You got to make this a resort. You got to use your beach property. You got some great real estate here. What does this old the young commie say to that? What are you talking about? Trump's talking like some real estate developer, which is what he is.
Well, and he doesn't really hide that he sees these negotiations as part of this boardroom mentality where you got to talk tough, but you also have to kind of give a.
Do you think Kim Jong-un wants to loosen up his country and turn it into a resort town?
But no, I mean, many people are rightfully skeptical on it. But Chris, I'm actually sitting here because I'm still recovering from G7 coverage, which I've just done for the last couple of days, where we are still, to this day, even in Singapore, when he's coming off of this historic summit, the president is still trashing Justin Trudeau for criticizing him after he left, because of the fact that he feels that Justin Trudeau was unjust in his attack because he did it after the president left.
Those attacks weren't really attacks. I watched the whole thing. It wasn't that tough.
And it wasn't anything new either. It's not something that Justin Trudeau hasn't said before.
Well, while in Singapore, the president was asked why he had such high praise for Kim and harsh words for allies like Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Let's watch him explain that.
What do you say to America's allies who worry that you might be jeopardizing our long-term alliances and who worry that you might be treating our historic friends as enemies and our historic enemies as friends?
Well, first of all, I think it's a very fair question. I had a very good meeting with the G7, and I left the meeting, and I'll be honest, we are being taken advantage of by virtually every one of those countries. I have a good relationship with Justin Trudeau. I really did, other than he had a news conference that he had because he assumed I was in an airplane and I wasn't watching. He learned that's going to cost a lot of money for the people of Canada. He learned. You can't do that. You can't do that.
You like that threat, John?
That's a serious threat.
You like that kind of threat?
No, it's petty. This is the president of the United States. We're the most powerful country in the world, and we're treating our friends, the countries that have fought and died with us to preserve liberty, and we're treating them like an extortion racket. It's horrific.
Well, let's talk about values. I don't want to get too squishy, but the fact is we believe in values, and the fact is we like democracies. We like countries where they actually get to pick their leaders and dump them when they don't like them. If you don't like Jimmy Carter, we could get rid of him. We could get rid of George Sr. or Bush, but we have the freedom to do that. They don't have the freedom to dump Kim Jong-un. He's a third-generation character who inherited the job, and he's probably got it for life. Well, it's certainly not a democracy.
This is the debate we were having after the G7 when President Trump said, well, let's let Russia back in. First of all, the G7 is not just economic powers. They're economic liberal democracies. Russia's smaller economy than Brazil, than India, than almost the Republic of Korea.
Why does Trump want him in?
Because he's Putin's ally. Either Putin's got something on him. I mean,
well, that's a question I have. Does he want Vivian, does he want to be allies with North Korea, friends?
I mean,
it seems like that's what he wanted. He was dating with the idea of marrying. He clearly, it's a pretty good metaphor. He wasn't just saying, I'm going to hang out with this guy for one day in Singapore. He was talking up a relationship.
Yeah, no, I mean.
How can you have a relationship with a dictator like that?
At least in the beginning, he wants to see other people, but he's definitely on the track to date him exclusively. I mean, he thinks that that's
well, look at his friends
legacy.
He's made. Erdogan in Turkey.
Trump doesn't date
Vladimir
exclusively.
Putin.
He likes to play
And he
around.
doesn't like anybody who's been elected.
Yeah.
Look, it's Putin, Xi, Kim now, Erdogan, and the people he's beating up on are our closest friends and allies. The Germans, the British, the French, the Canadians. It's everything is upside down.
But Chris, it's really important to think that we're going to actually need these allies for a lot of the negotiations coming forward. We're talking about China tariffs moving forward. The deadline is this Friday. Just to get China in compliance with some of the demands that this administration is pushing, we actually need our allies to help us sort of form that unified front to get China to
I just
comply.
remember Ronald Reagan, who was
tough.
a Republican, who believed we were sitting on a hill, and he believed we were a role model. And he loved the fact that whatever you think of Reagan, he loved the fact it was a democracy. It was a liberal democracy. People had rights, and we got along with the rest of the world. And Reagan always tried to get along with the rest of the world, including communists. But he did it the right way. He negotiated. Anyway, thank you, John Wolfsdale and Vivian Salama. Up next, President Trump's lawyers are working with attorneys for other people who have been caught up in the Mueller probe. Is that a sign that Trump's legal team is worried? He's actually using multilateral agreements with the other people in trouble with Mueller to save himself. Interesting. This is Hardball where the action is. Welcome back to Harbor. There's some recent developments now in the Mueller probe that have been overshadowed in the wake of the president's North Korean summit, but they're happening right now. The Daily Beast is revealing that the president's legal team has a joint defense agreement now with the lawyers for other witnesses and defendants in the investigation. That agreement allows the lawyers to share information without violating attorney-client privilege, effectively allowing them to pool their knowledge about the prosecution. According to one source, for a while, the president's lawyers even had regular conference calls with other lawyers to discuss the Mueller investigation. While such agreements are fairly common, it suggests that Trump may be familiar with the defense strategies of key witnesses and defendants, including possibly Paul Manafort, who faces a bail hearing and arraignment on new charges this Friday. On Friday, we're going to also learn whether Manafort, who now stands accused of witness tampering, will have his bail agreement revoked, which could land him in jail pending trial. This is serious Hardball. I'm joined by Joyce Vance, former U.S. attorney and MSNBC legal analyst. Now, okay, let's skip up to Manafort. I'm fascinated. It looks to me like he's going inside, and he may not get out ever.
I think that that's a strong possibility. Prosecutors don't like defendants who go out and try to tamper with witnesses. Usually judges don't like that any more than prosecutors do. He could easily find his bond revoked on Friday.
Well, he's got a Hobbesian choice now. He can either wait for a pardon from Trump, who keeps teasing him with one. There he is stoically going in and out of court all day, courthouse. Or he can wait and think that Mueller might get him down to 5 years or something. But the way Mueller is stacking up these charges, how can he let him off free after all these charges he's been thrown at, including jury tampering or witness tampering?
It's hard to know what kind of deal Mueller might be contemplating giving to Manafort. I think it's unlikely, frankly, that he gets a deal where he doesn't have to do any time in prison. But depending on the information that he would have to share that could make cases against other defendants, he might get some consideration from the prosecution.
Do you think lawyers and public interest lawyers and public defenders and ACLU people, do they think that this guy Mueller might be throwing the book at this guy in a hardball way that's really over the top? I mean, basically Manafort is being squeezed so hard because everybody thinks he's going to be the star witness against Trump, that he knows all about it. He was chairman of the campaign, and before that he was chairman of the convention. He must have, since he's a Russian expert, he must have talked Russia a lot with Trump. There's so much they're trying to get out of this guy, but the way they're going after him is so hard, so tough. Is it fair?
It's a really good question. We're having a conversation about criminal justice reform in this country. You know, we're talking about whether people should be charged as heavily as they have been and go to jail for as long. But I'd say in Manafort's case, the charges very clearly fit the conduct. This is serious conduct. This is white-collar fraud involving millions of dollars and involving foreign countries and our national interests. So if anyone should be treated this way, it's Paul Manafort.
Okay, McClatchy's reporting now new connections between Russia and the NRA, the National Rifle Association would spend an unprecedented $30 million to boost Trump's campaign. That's the NRA, $30 million in 2016. According to photographs and an anonymous NRA source, several prominent Russians, some in Putin's inner circle, have been identified as having contact with the NRA officials during the 2016 U.S. election campaign. Those Russians hosted an NRA delegation for, quote, a week of lavish whining and dining in Moscow in December of 15. According to McClatchy, they include the Russian Deputy Prime Minister of Defense, who was under U.S. sanctions at the time, as well as Alexander Torshin, who famously spoke with Donald Trump Jr. 5 months later at the NRA event in Kentucky. Okay, what's the common interest of the NRA and Moscow?
That's the $80 million question here, whether there was a common interest in getting Trump elected, then candidate Trump elected, and whether Russian money was illegally funneled into the campaign using the NRA as the cutout.
Is that legal?
That's not legal. You can't use foreign money in a U.S. election, and you can't use, we'd call the NRA here a straw person, someone who looks like they're eligible to make the contribution. You can't funnel money through them if you're a prohibited contributor. So it would be a conspiracy to contribute money if the evidence lends
Well,
that
what
way.
about the NRA? They've been selling themselves, as I can remember, as the patriotic front in this country, that they care about our country more than anybody, the Second Amendment. Now, if they're conspiring with the Russians, they don't look too patriotic to me.
They don't, and they, of course, have denied all of this. The NRA reports that it has not yet been contacted by Mueller's prosecutors to tell their side of the story. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
Well, that's a hot one. Thank you, Joyce Vance. Up next, the Hardball Roundtable weighs in on Trump diplomacy. Why was the president talking real estate potential with the North Koreans? Is Sandals going to Pyongyang? Plus, fresh off his peace talks, President Trump goes after critic Robert De Niro, calling the actor punch drunk and very low IQ. Where does he get this stuff? You're watching Hardball. Welcome back to Hardball. Wait till you get a load of this. After that historic summit in Singapore, President Trump was asked about the future of North Korea should Kim Jong-un give up the country's nuclear weapons. The president made this sales pitch.
As an example, they have great beaches. You see that whenever they're exploding their cannons into the ocean, right? So I said, boy, look at that. Wouldn't that make a great condo behind? And I explained, I said, you know, instead of doing that, you could have the best hotels in the world right there. Think of it from a real estate perspective. You have South Korea, you have China, and they own the land in the middle. How bad is that, right? It's great.
For more, let's bring in the Hardball Roundtable tonight. George F. Wells, a syndicated columnist and an MSNBC contributor. Anita Kumar is White House correspondent for McClatchy, and Jason Johnson is politics editor for TheRoot.com and an MSNBC contributor. George, I thought I was listening to a real estate developer there.
Well, you were. If he thinks North Korea's beaches are great, he should see Cuba's. And if Cuba had, in 1959, 1960, decided to open itself up, it would be the tourist mecca. It would be a very wealthy country. Turns out the Castro brothers weren't interested in that. They had other goals for their dictatorship. And the same is true with North Korea. Mr. Trump is demonstrating the ultimate parochialism, which is to believe that everyone wants what Americans want.
Anita, the proletarian in North Korea, I don't think they're ready to have their first Sandals opening or Club Med. I'm just guessing. What do you think?
I don't know. But, you know, he's had the same message for the last few weeks, few months, but he just didn't say it quite this way. He keeps saying that if North Korea, you know, goes through with this deal, that it's going to be better for the people there, that it's going to be an economic engine. We've heard him say that over and over. He just hasn't talked about about the condos and the beaches and the developer stuff. But, you know, that's what he relates to. He came into office with no other experiences than being a businessman. He likes talking.
Jason, this fellow we're watching here with the president has had many years to think about whether he'd rather have nuclear weapons or condos.
Yes.
And he's chosen the nuclear weapons in every instant. And I think as of today, the North Koreans have heard nothing about denuclearization, from what I can tell.
Oh, probably not. And you know, look, I don't want to see what kind of hotel service comes from prison camps and slave labor, which is what Kim Jong-un has in a lot of places. And again, I think that the particularly disturbing part about this is, you know, this president is like a walking emoluments clause violation. I mean, he's literally saying, like,
you think
hey,
he's selling his hotels?
Oh, of course he's selling his hotels. He's not talking about Marriott.
It does sound like it's padded. Anyway, Trump may have been fawning over Kim Jong-un, but he's got a new adversary in actor Robert De Niro. At Sunday's Tony Awards night, De Niro slammed Trump in a profanity-laced tirade, saying it's no longer down with Trump, it's F Trump, and you can figure out what that word was. Trump today punched back in Twitter, writing, Robert De Niro, a very low IQ individual, has received too many shots to the head by real boxers in movies. I watched him last night and truly believe he may be punch drunk. I guess he doesn't realize the economy is the best it's ever been, with employment being at an all-time high and many companies pouring back into our country. Wake up, Punchy. George, your comment on that?
Why are we commenting on this?
Because the President of the United States has spoken about one of the leading actors of our time, and they're not being nice.
He's a great actor, and he probably is as ignorant as broccoli about everything outside the celebrity bubble in which he lives. He gets up in front of a friendly audience and says what they like to hear, reaps the applause. The president reflexively attacks him, and four adults are sitting here talking about this.
Well, it's called trolling today, George. It's when people want to get us to say something about them. Anita?
The audience may have loved Robert De Niro and
Where were you on this, Anita? Do you think he should have said that about the President of the United States?
Should either of them said either of those
should he?
things?
Should
I don't think either of them should have said it.
How about Robert De Niro?
That's what I'm talking about.
No, but you narrow it down. Do you think Robert De Niro should have said that?
I don't know.
So you see, what is this?
Well, I'm not gonna say it. Look,
I'm willing to say
both,
that
both
the
of their
cultural
audiences,
part of this country has got to maintain some nobility in these times, so people can know there's an alternative to Trump in terms of values, and you don't go to his level.
Both of their audiences love them.
Look, civil discourse matters, right? And grown adults aren't supposed to get on stage and use cuss words unless it's a concert. And more importantly, and this is what bothers me, did that get anybody elected? Did it put money in anybody's pocket? Did it change any policies? Did it stop Jeff Sessions?
I think it helps Trump.
I mean, it helps Trump. It helps the resistance. But I don't see why these temper tantrums on either side do any benefit to anybody in America policy.
Okay, finally, I was a guest on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert last night. Here's a clip from that show. I think it'll cause a little excitement here. Okay. I know you like the movie Man for All Seasons, and I love that movie.
Yeah, sure.
About Henry VIII and about Thomas More, the great Thomas More, who died for his religion. And there's a great scene in it when Henry VIII, beautifully played by Robert Shaw, gets out of his boat. And just watch how everybody behaves.
I heard you like this clip. We actually pulled this clip. Imagine that Shaw is Trump.
That's them.
Yes.
That's the Republican Party.
He was a monster. Robert Bolt describes him as a monster who none dared gainsay.
Yes, well, today these guys are all like Mike Pence. They do exactly what Trump does. Well, is that what we're saying with the Republican Party today after Trump met with Kim Jong-un? They're all applauding him. George, you've spoken rather eloquently in your column about Mike Pence.
Well, today about 85% of Republicans have very strong approval of Donald Trump. That's above the 75% that had the same feeling for Ronald Reagan at this point in his presidency. This is a Trump party now.
Yes, therefore say no evil about the president.
We've said 10 or 20 times that something was the breaking point and they weren't going to follow him, and they are. But that doesn't mean they like it. They're just quietly might have anxiety about it.
They're beginning to act like North Koreans, dare I say, because they're marching in step. They're smiling when told to. They're applauding when told to. They're not wearing those big hats. But short of that, they're acting like North Koreans.
Oh, yeah.
Republicans.
Look, everybody is goose-stepping with policies that they that they did not like, did not like a week ago. They're in step with this president. But I will say this, and this has always been the most important thing, sort of from a political standpoint. All of this is about Trump. The guy has no coattails. His behavior works well for him, but it does not seem to trickle down to the Republican Party as a whole. Now, if he magically can take that 87% approval and actually start moving some races and some governorships.
Okay, we'll see tonight when he went after Mark Sanford today. We'll see if he can knock him off. It makes me sort of like Mark Sanford today. And Roundtable sticking with us. Up next, these three will tell me something I don't know. You're watching Hardball.
There's a special place in hell for any foreign leader that engages in bad faith diplomacy with President Donald J. Trump and then tries to stab him in the back on the way out the door.
Well, that was White House trade advisor Peter Navarro on Sunday lashing out at Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The insults followed a fractious G7 meeting and came amid a growing war of words over trade in the United States between us and Canada. Well, today Navarro said his language was inappropriate.
My mission was to send a very strong signal of strength. The problem is that in conveying that message, I used language that was inappropriate and
special place in hell for the Prime Minister.
Basically lost the power of that message. I own that. That was my mistake. Those were my words.
We'll be right back. We're back with a roundtable. George, tell me something I don't know.
Bill Weld, former two-term governor of Massachusetts, the 2016 vice presidential candidate on the Libertarian ticket, is working very hard, going from state Libertarian convention to another. He'll be in New Orleans at the national convention, intending to make a serious run as the presidential candidate of the Libertarian Party, which will be on all 50 states.
Well, if it's Bernie versus Trump, there's an opening somewhere in the middle.
That's exactly what he thinks.
Anita.
We posted a story a little bit a while ago about how the Trump administration is looking into erecting tent cities to deal with the increase in the unaccompanied minors coming over the border. So this is something that's been done before, but not during the Trump administration, and they're looking at Texas right now. They'll be at military installations, military posts.
Jason.
So what you may know, of course, is the Supreme Court recently ruled that states can now get taxes off of gambling with Murphy versus NCAA. What you may not know is this may solve one of the biggest educational crises we have in America. MSL Group just did a study for a 25-cent charge on every $100 bet on the NFL in this country. You could actually pay every D1 athlete from golf to NFL, from golf to football at every college in America.
Well, are we going to have a sports book on politics and elections?
Oh yeah, just like Ladbrokes in the UK.
Can we do it here?
Yeah, we can.
There's going to be money to be made for us.
Yes.
If we so-called experts like me, go make some money, because I can't wait to.
Show.
I don't need the trouble is it screws up your commentary once you got a bet down. Anyway, thank you, George F. Will, Anita Kumar, and Jason Johnson. When we return, let me finish tonight with Trump Watch. You're watching Hardball. Trump Watch, Tuesday, June 12th, 2018. In my old political days, I remember a young candidate coming back from a meeting with the Brooklyn political boss. He was over himself with how well the meeting had gone, how thrilled he was with actually being in the presence of this tough leader. What did he say? His political consultant asked him. Oh, he was great. He could not have been more friendly. I can't tell you how wonderful it went. What did he say? His political advisor persisted. Did he promise to endorse you? It wasn't exactly what he committed to. It was kind of how he said it. He was wonderful. What did he say? What did he actually promise to do? The old pro kept at it. What did he say? Finally, the young candidate realized he'd been had. He didn't say anything. Donald Trump has just come away from his big meeting with the North Korean leader feeling great. But what did he get from that, boss? What did Kim Jong actually say about getting rid of his nuclear weapons, about inspections to make sure it's done? The answer is he didn't say anything. And that's Hardball for now. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, it's Chris Hayes from MSNBC. You know, every day I come to the office and we make a television show. And every day I think to myself, there's so much more I want to talk about. And so this is our podcast. It's called Why Is This Happening? And the whole idea behind it is to get to the root of the things that we see play out every day. They're driven by big ideas. Each week, I sit down with a person uniquely suited to explain why this is happening.
New episodes of Why Is This Happening every Tuesday. Listen for free wherever you get your podcasts.